I think my mindset right now is thinking that each of the failures that I've faced, as long as I learn something from it, then I can be a better person. So it's better to fail and to be better than not to fail at all.
Please subscribe and turn on your notifications to stay tuned to the latest updates at the Powder Room Talk.
Hello, I'm JJ Liu. Welcome to the Powder Room with me and my girlfriends, Viola Mananta and Regina Wijaya. The Powder Room is where it gets real, and today we're going to talk about failing forward. Because the fear of failure is something that haunts many and resulted in many untapped potentials inside all of us. With us today is Judith Pitana, or Judith, the editor-in-chief of popbella.com, which is also the official media partner of the Powder Room Talk. Judith is a working mother of one daughter, and she juggles the role between a full-time career woman and motherhood. Prior to Judith joining Popbella in 2017, Judith was the longtime editor-in-chief of CosmoGIRL Indonesia. We're very excited to actually unpack failing forward with Judith today because throughout her career of becoming a leader in the marketplace, she had to embrace failure and actually experience them. So without further ado, let's come on into the Powder Room.
So Judith, thank you so much for being here with us today for the Powder Room Talk.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, to Lola and JJ. So I've met Judith several times actually during our works because we work a lot. She was the chief editor of popbella.com, and me in my beauty industry, normally we have some events together or even some campaigns together. But I know this about Judith is because I'm following her Instagram for sure. She's also a mom of a very cute little girl called Aiko. She's juggling between her works and also between motherhood. And it's really impressed me because she's very open. Meaning as in she shared about her frustration. Bringing up a 3-year-old daughter. And also her struggles working as a working mom during the COVID, during the pandemic. And I realized, Judith, that along the time of your career and motherhood, there's a lot of issues, challenges, and also room for failures, right?
Oh, so many many rooms for failures, challenges, of course. Especially being a mom and juggling a career, it's not really that easy.
Yeah.
And I'm kind of this outspoken person. Especially on Instagram.
Yes, I can see that. And being very honest, I think.
Yeah,
very honest.
Because one thing that I learned is I found that a lot of the people that I follow on Instagram, they always share their successes, but they don't really share their failures. So I want my friends or followers to know that it's okay to fail. So that's why I'm trying to be as vulnerable and open as much as I can on the platform.
And when you work in media, do you feel like a lot of pressure coming in? Because that kind of perfection of working for the media industry?
Yeah, maybe at first, but with time, I believe that perfection doesn't exist. That what makes us perfect as human is our imperfections, because through that, if we can realize the imperfections that we have, and it's so many of them, that's where we can grow. So I don't really chase for perfections anymore because it's so superficial right now, especially as I age.
We started to age.
Especially when I'm getting more mature.
Yes.
Yeah,
I like that word.
Yeah, especially when I'm getting more mature, I just don't chase for that anymore because I believe that even until the end, we can only try to be better. And if at some point we felt that we are already perfect, then we don't have any room to grow anymore.
That's so good.
Yeah.
That's true, right?
Yeah. But so you have realized that in your life already. But in general, like, we are all so afraid to fail. Like,
Yeah.
why are we so afraid, even though we know it's part of life? Like how you said, there's no perfection. So full of fear. Like, why are we so afraid to fail?
I feel that when we're talking about failure, I think society or just has put this misconception about failure into our minds because they like to equate failing at something meaning you are a failure.
That's true.
But that's actually completely wrong because failing in something does not make you a failure as a person. And I think like this misconception comes about because like we're living in a very competitive society, right? And then human beings, we're also very social beings, and now there's social media.
Comparisons, right?
Makes it even worse, right? We want that affirmation from our friends, from our family, from the environment that we're in, because we think that is something of value because we're social beings. But I think how this escalates is also because there is a type of conditioning that sometimes happens in our journey of life. Like it can be parenting style, school environment, work environment, where these environments that we grow up in or we're exposed to, they actually favor, like you said, perfection or not making a mistake, right? Like in a corporate setting, some certain leaders or certain companies puts kind of like a type of fear into the team and be like, if you make a mistake, you're going to cost the company so much money, and it becomes so detrimental towards progress because this kinds of like misconception or this kind of like conditioning actually triggers people to think that failure is the opposite of success. But failure and success are again completely two different things because actually failure is a very important like element that leads to success because it is through like failing you actually have growth and you learn stuff, right? So I personally was raised in an environment. My formative years was in Singapore. Throughout my childhood, Singapore has a very kind of almost militaristic style of education where,
I've heard about that.
You're not even allowed to answer questions for your test or exams in your own words.
Oh yeah?
And I thought that was in my early parts of my childhood or my learning process, that was actually detrimental to whatever potential that could have been inside of me until my parents plucked me out of Singapore and then moved me to Indonesia and sent me to a school like JIS, which has completely, it was the other way around. It was exactly what my parents wanted. Write in your own words, don't memorize. And I think like that mindset shift was like, it changed my life.
Was it hard for you, the change?
It was very hard. I was so close to, I think if there was a time in my life where I had depression, it was really my years as a teen, just because I was like, everything, my whole paradigm, where I was conditioned that this is how you be a good student, this is how you score good grades. And I come to JIS and they're like, why are you writing the books that you're reading word for word? Like, why are you doing that? And it was like, what? Wait, what is going on? So I have to, I can write things in my own words now. I'm allowed to try and I guess make mistakes. I didn't see it as mistakes at that time, but now when I look back at, that my parents actually moving me out of an environment where the conditioning was like, you know what, don't have a brain, just memorize, just repeat what I tell you. It took me, I think it wasn't until like my junior year in high school that like I think my brain started to work. Like the first 2 years was so painful, and my parents don't really speak English well, so they couldn't help me on my homework. I had to really figure out everything on my own, and it was very challenging, very, very challenging.
When I look back in my life, it's not really much about parents or family, but I'm always a high achiever, meaning I always want to achieve best thing in life. Yes, Miss Ambitious.
Little Miss Ambitious.
Little Miss Ambitious. So, but I think the reason why I want to achieve that perfection is because to cover up my insecurities in life. So I want to appear as a perfect person who always get the good grades. I always be the best among my friends. I always being likable, and I don't like failures because if I fail, it means like I'm just what I think who I am. So if I score perfectly in my class, meaning I always be the smart Regina that people know. That like I always be the smart one. So once I moved high school and I got we call it in Indonesia rapot merah. So I was so depressed. I've always been in the top 5 in my class.
Have you ever internalized that during
only,
that?
Now only I internalize
Oh,
when I grow up, because it gave me so much thoughts that why am I so afraid of failure? I think it's also to cover up my insecurities, because I mentioned in my other sessions that I always been very insecure about my body, about how I look. So I cover it up of being a good, top in the class.
Yeah.
I may not be pretty, but I'm smart. So that kind of thoughts in my life, and even until I work, it's the same. I may not be pretty, but I have a good salary. I am good. I'm very ambitious. I have a good career.
Yeah.
So it's to cover up one thing to another. Only when I realize the truth and I start to internalize, I realize that failure is part of life, but I'm still afraid of failure. I don't like failure. Even until now, nobody likes it, right? Nobody likes to fail, for sure.
Do you think you're still afraid to fail, or are you?
Of course. I'm still afraid to fail, but not as much as before.
Okay.
I think I have a similar experience with you, because I used to think failures makes me a failure.
Yeah.
And but then again, I experienced so many failures anyway in my lives. And then I realized that I'm still here, I'm still standing. If anything, it really makes me a better and stronger person. So I think my mindset right now is thinking that each of the failures that I faced, as long as I learn something from it, then I can be a better person. So it's better to fail and to be better than not to fail at all. I think that's what I realize with me and the failures that I've got. But if you
Were you
ask me,
afraid before at some point? And what do you think triggered that fear?
I think what triggered my fear of failures is because I'm also high achievers. I'm quite ambitious myself. And
hello.
I'm quite ambitious myself, so I have a big sister, right? She is way prettier than me, way smarter than me. I look up to her so much since I was such a little girl. And since I was a little girl, I always thought, like, how can I be as good as her?
Okay.
I don't think I can, but I will try. So even from a young age, I will try my best to be as smart, as pretty, or as confident, and has as much friends as she is. And I think that's where my ambition came from, because I want to be as good as my sister.
Wow.
But then growing up, and I'm close to my sister, and I told her this. I think growing up, she's always been my role model, but then I also realized that me and her doesn't have to be the same person. We can be good in our own ways. So that's why I think I'm getting more soft in facing failures, because I know she also fails at things, whereas I'm also fails at other things.
Yeah. For me personally, I think failing is such a tough thing because it's connected to so much shame. And it's not something that my surrounding created. I'm so sure it has absolutely nothing to do with the way my parents brought me up, because they never enforced that. They never made me feel bad for making mistakes, quite the opposite. But I know I was just born with this sense of shame when I didn't reach my own standards. And my standards have been very high since I'm very small.
Yeah.
I was also the smallest. I was the smallest in the family. So I don't see anyone around who's like smaller than me and doing things less good. So my standards are at least at my sister's standards which are 2 years older. Not that I competed with her, but I felt like to be like that, I guess, right? Like, and so my very first memory of my life was when I must have been around 2 years old, and we were at this event, and I was bringing my own cake to the table on a plate, and I dropped it, and I was so ashamed. And it was this shame because I failed. I was making a mistake, and then straight away I felt extremely ashamed. It burned into my memory, that feeling of shame. That's nothing that ever anyone would have made me feel like. I mean, I was 2, 3, nobody shames a little child, right? But now I could see the same thing in my son, and he had it since he was born, and there's nothing I could do about it. He always had it, and all I can do is trying to help him not to feel like that, but it's in him. And so I think it's not always the environment, it's not always you think are the expectations of other people. It can be very much your own standards and your own expectations. And strangely for me, it was like, I'm so afraid to fail because that feeling of shame is just, it's like unbearable. It's like exponential to the actual thing. It's like a little mistake feels, the shame is just as big.